The Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning are looking to buy at the trade deadline. The Seattle Kraken are most likely going to be sellers. We'll break down all of these teams' plans before the deadline, plus who expected the Four Nations tournament to be this exciting. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On VGK, Chris Gawlik. And Chris, VGK, the first team to be affected by an injury at the World Cup. Shea Theodore now week to week. Talk to me about what you know about this injury and how it's going to affect Vegas going forward.
This was clearly a part of the script so they could skew the LTIR again, just so everybody knows. This was all planned out months in advance, and this is part of the script. More than the Chiefs were supposed to win the Super Bowl against the Eagles. Like, this script was even better written than that. No, listen, Theodore takes an awkward hit. It's like he's trying to protect himself, and almost like he was protecting his hand before the hit. Golden Knights came out and said week to week, haven't heard anything about surgery or anything like that. Elliot Friedman recently put out there he believes it's going to be much closer to the start of the playoffs. Week to week, what we know in VGK terms, that is more than a month, possibly less than 2 months, but it could be more. All depends if there's going to be surgery involved, if it's allegedly a clean break of his wrist or his hand or something like that. It could be nice and quick. If there's more damage than surgery is needed, it could be longer. So we know it's about an 6 to 10 week injury is probably what it looks like. And looking at a calendar, today is February the 16th. Oh, look at this. How perfect is this? The season ends Wednesday, April 16th. Exactly 2 months from today. Look at that.
Amazing. So first things first, without making any moves, how do you pick up the slack for Shea Theodore not being in the lineup? He is a major part of this team.
Noah Hannafin likely takes whatever roles Theodore had as far as special teams number one. Hannafin did come in and operate the power play for large parts of last season when he came in and throughout some of the playoffs, I believe. So, I mean, that's going to be a drop-off. Let's be clear about that. Shea Theodore was he's not a Norris contender, but if you were to take like your top 7 Norris contenders, his name would be in there. He's not among the Werenskis and the Makars and the Quinn Hughes and stuff like that, or Roman Josi for that matter, but he's on that next wave. And who knows, had he gone on a torrid scoring pace for the last 20-ish games, 35, whatever the number is, 27 games, I believe, maybe that changes. But a point being is no one is going to directly come in and pick up those pieces. As far as which defenseman comes in to take Shea Theodore's spot, Theodore's a left-handed shot. You have Korczak and Ben Hutton, who have played very limited roles this season. Ben Hutton's a lefty. Ben Hutton might slot in. Ben Hutton is kind of the Swiss Army knife. He's the Golden Knights' 7th defenseman. Can put him on either side. You can put him with any partner. He'll be just fine. The better long-term fit might be Caden Korczak, a bit younger, the 24-year-old. Ben Hutton's 31. Korczak is an NHL-ready defenseman who's been on the Golden Knights roster the entire season. I think he's only played somewhere between 4, 5, or 6 games due to injuries and spot starts and stuff like that. And I think a couple of those games even came at forward when the Golden Knights had to go 11-7.
Were you surprised at the way the World Cup has been played so far? I mean, 3 fights in the first minute of the game between the United States and Canada.
I put out, I saw a video, I think it was like the 96 World Cup or something like that, where the teams were just, it was it was worse than any Islanders Rangers game. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy watching what happened. And there's been some, I think, on the broadcast last night. I watched the Sportsnet feed, which was really good to watch. And I think they were showing even some exhibition games,
Yeah.
where the USA and Canada had some very noteworthy moments, I guess. So was I surprised there was 3 fights in 8 seconds? Of course, that's no one saw that coming. Was I surprised at any level of animosity given the importance of this game? Given the booing during the national anthem, I don't want to go down a political lane, but the United States team Team USA is definitely embracing. I don't want to call him the villain because that's not the right way to put it, but they're embracing that villain role right now.
Does the injury to Shea Theodore change the way VGK approaches the trade deadline?
Oh yeah, I mean, listen. Right now, the Golden Knights already have William Karlsson on LTIR. That's $5.9 million right there. Shea Theodore has a cap hit of $5.2 million. 5.2, 5.9, carry the one. That's $11.1 million. Assuming William Karlsson's injury is going to drag past the deadline and all the way into the playoffs. Karlsson's injury has been really, really quiet. This is a lingering issue going back to last season, where in William Karlsson's words, his hamstring wasn't chilling. He suffered an injury during the Dallas Stars first round playoff series last season, caused him to miss time early this season. Clearly not been himself on the ice. I think he had like an 11 or 12 game scoreless drought before the injury. There was some scuttlebutt that Karlsson's injury was going to keep him out of the World Cup, and he was put on LTIR even before that happened. So over $11 million, and the Golden Knights have 2 injuries in Cole Schwitt and Tanner Pearson, a couple lower level players, but right now they are impacting the Golden Knights salary cap. They are on the VGK roster. That's another $1.5 million. So Kelly McCrimmon's got a unlimited Toys R Us gift card in the store all to himself as the March 7th trade deadline. I think it's March 7th.
Yeah.
Is quickly approaching. So yeah, it's going to be, this team's going to look a little bit different, and Kelly McCrimmon will utilize every penny of that and more if he can get other teams to take on some cap.
So what are they going to be looking to add, and what are they willing to give up in order to get it?
F those draft picks. Sorry, I said that, but that's just how it is. Whatever draft picks the Golden Knights have left are in play. There's 2 second-round picks in the next 2 years, first round in the season after that, so 2027, I believe. I don't know how far ahead you can trade draft picks in the NHL. I don't know if they can go that deep or not. If they can, they will. I can assure you that. Far as prospect, I always thought the Golden Knights would be considering trading a defenseman as the deadline approached to address, that's the word I was looking for, address their issues with their lack of depth on the wing, but obviously that changed right now. So going to be looking at defensemen, going to see what's out there, and they're going to be looking for a winger, possibly a center as well. We heard Brad Marchand. That's the latest one right now. Brad Marchand is linked to Vegas right now. There's, again, rumors, people are linked to a lot of different places right now. I said even like a player like Brock Nelson could be an interesting candidate to join the Vegas Golden Knights. And the defenseman that Pittsburgh just traded to Vancouver, forgive me, I'm already drawing a blank on his name. The Golden Knights were allegedly involved in that before the Shea Theodore injury. So with all of that knowledge, I have no clue what they're going to do.
and I mean, they're going to be all in, though. That's the sort of underlying philosophy. It's all in to win right now.
The Golden Knights, Bill Foley does not believe in rebuilding. He's been very clear about that. General manager Kelly McCrimmon, team president George McPhee have embraced that direction, if you will, from Bill Foley. There's no such thing as rebuilding. Golden Knights are overperforming this season. Let's be clear about that. I don't think a lot of people expected much more than maybe a second, third place type of team in the Pacific Division, maybe even a wild card team. You wonder what would happen as the trade deadline in the last third of the season gets going. Golden Knights actually have a little bit of momentum right now coming out of what used to be the All-Star break, now the Four Nations break. Won their last 2 games, and they played some good hockey in a time they normally play poor hockey. So Yeah, the Golden Knights are, using your words, all in to win, to say the least. And every penny of that LTIR pool will be put in play. I can assure you that, and then some.
All right, Chris, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Yep, Locked On VGK, or Locked On Golden Knights, I think is the official way to say it. YouTube, anywhere you catch your podcast. I'm at TD Chris G on Twitter. Again, that's like touchdown TD Chris G.
All right, Chris, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Lightning, Josh Sperber. And Josh, let's start with the World Cup. Jake Guentzel looking really, really good. Your thoughts on his performance so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just loving this Four Nations because Lightning players are doing so well. I mean, in every single game, at least one guy from the Lightning has an assist, and Guentzel has goals in each of the two games. 3 points, 2 goals and an assist for Guentzel, 2 of them with a goalie in the net, getting that empty netter to seal it last night against Canada. I mean, he's been excellent, and it's really just been a continuation of what he's brought to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think he is just, time and time again this year when the Lightning have needed a goal, he's been there to help set it up. He's just a really smart hockey player. He gets to the right spaces on the ice and just dominates. I mean, plain and simple. He's been one of the best acquisitions, if not the best offseason acquisition in the entire NHL this season, I think. So I'm just honestly blown away that he's even on the Lightning. I have a friend of mine actually from North Carolina, and we were talking a little bit around when Guentzel got on the Lightning, and the one text that I remember that just like lives in my brain every time I see Guentzel score a goal is he texted me back. I can't say the first word because it starts with an F. I can't believe you guys have Guentzel. He's so, same word again, good.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah.
Great pickup. No question about that. Are you surprised at the intensity and the physicality we've seen at Four Nations?
The physicality, and by that I mean the 3 fights in 9 seconds on Saturday night, a little bit, yes. I did expect this to be a little less physical in terms of the fight. That being said, I could have told you that if there was any game where this would happen, it would be USA versus Canada. I think that part is less of a surprise, given the kind of charged political climate surrounding an already pretty intense hockey rivalry between U.S. and Canada. But no, I think the intensity of the play is fantastic. I mean, John Cooper called that first game, Canada versus Sweden, the fastest hockey game he's ever been a part of. It's certainly the fastest one I've ever seen. And while the speed might not have been there for the entirety of that game of USA versus Canada, I mean, this whole tournament so far has just been some of the best hockey games that I've ever watched. I really think that this is the best thing for the NHL during the All-Star break, for sure.
Yeah, no, this has been a pleasant surprise in my opinion. The Lightning won 4 in a row before the Four Nations break. I mean, does it mean that this was ill-timed for the Lightning as they were playing well?
I mean, it certainly helps now that, I mean, you look at the players that the Lightning have in the Four Nations tournament, and all of them are guys that are key to what the Tampa Bay Lightning are doing. You've got Cirelli, Point, Hagel, Guentzel, obviously, like we've been talking about, and of course, Victor Hedman. Those are 5 guys, with the exception of Nikita Kucherov, that are probably most key to what the Lightning do. Maybe put Vasilevsky in there, but the point is, these are 2 of the 5 most important players on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're still getting significant run during Four Nations. So, I mean, yeah, you'd like the whole team to just kind of keep the momentum going, but I don't think that just a break after a really strong run of games from the Lightning is going to stop them. I think they're just locked into playoff mode right now, because I mean, you walked around the locker room, you talked to the guys before the Senators series, before those 2 road games against Atlantic Division teams, and every single one of the players used the word playoff at one point or another. I mean, that is just the focus that is with the Tampa Bay Lightning right now. They know what they have to do to win. They're an experienced team, and now is the time of year where it's just crunch time and they get to focus on it. So, would it be nice to carry a little bit more momentum from the 4-game win streak into longer in the season? Yeah, sure. You always want a little momentum, but the Lightning, I think, can get it back. They've got 3 games at home against some solid competition right after the Four Nations break that I think is going to do them well and hopefully continue their streak. And if Guentzel keeps playing the way he's been going in Four Nations, then the Lightning might not lose again. So that's pretty great too.
The Lightning are in an interesting spot. They're able to compete for first place, and yet they're not that far ahead of the wild card teams. What do you think they'll look to do at the trade deadline, if anything, and what are they willing to give up?
Willingness to give up, I feel like, is a bit more complicated. But I've been saying on Locked On Lightning for months that the Lightning need to make a move at the trade deadline. I think they should get a forward. I think that's where they need a little bit more depth on defense. Yeah, it might be nice if they got another defenseman, but they are hoping to get J.J. Moser back after the Four Nations break, which will give a little more depth into their defense. And I think, honestly, set them up, because if you look at the Lightning's farm system, if you look at, guys like Max Crozier in Syracuse or Declan Carlisle, who have already played in the NHL this season from the AHL, I think that's where the future of the Lightning defense lies. I really don't think that right now a defenseman that they acquire at the deadline is going to make that much of a difference. That's not the case on offense, because, yeah, you look at the Lightning's first 2 lines and you think, why the heck do they need another forward on their team? They have the greatest collection of scoring talent in the NHL in their first 2 lines. I mean, it's ridiculous. But you look at the bottom 2 lines, point production compared to those top 2, and there is a huge drop-off. So getting a bottom 6 forward, I think, would be exactly what the Lightning need during this trade deadline.
How much cap space are we talking about that they have, and are there any ways to free up more if they need it?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to have to give up some prospects. They only have, I think, over $1 million, $1.5 million in projected cap space right now. So they're going to need to move. They might need to move a bigger player, but you look at some of the guys that have been kind of up and down a little bit in the NHL this year. Connor Sheary might be someone that you could move to just get more NHL time on a contending team. Jack Finley has been up. Dylan Duke, I think, is someone they're not going to want to trade. And maybe even Gage Gonzalez might be on the don't want to trade list. I mean, the Lightning have guys that have been up and down in the NHL this year that I think could move. They've got some players. I think they've got some forwards that they can move to make room for Isaac Howard when he comes in from Michigan State, because the way that the Lightning management are talking about him, he really, I think, is going to be the next talisman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, he's just looked so good. And obviously you're not going to want to give him up, looking the way he's leading the NCAA and everything. So you're going to have to give up some forwards. I think getting Ryder Korzak, that trade with the Rangers, can help the Lightning open up some space. Maybe give up a Max Groshev or a Gabriel Sturck or someone like that, or a Jesse Ilonen if they're looking to give up guys that are closer to being NHL ready. They've got some options if you look to Syracuse of guys to trade, and I think that they might not, get they might not get like a big name forward, but if they can just get someone relatively young that can compete on the bottom six line, then I think that can help them. But they're going to have to give up some prospects. They're going to have to give up some players from Syracuse and maybe even dip into their active roster. I see guys like Mikey Asimont as players that could be on the move, guys that maybe haven't been performing to the level that has been expected. But I mean, it's hard to really say because the Lightning, I feel like, aren't a team that builds a lot via these big player trades. I mean, obviously Guentzel was in a trade, but they gave up a 3rd round pick for him. Right. So, the Lightning build more through free agency and frankly through the draft than most teams in the league. So, just anticipating a trade for them when they really need it, like right now, is somewhat difficult.
All right. Well, I know you'll be following it every step of the way. Josh, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, my X handle is below at Josh_Sperber. You can find the podcast at Locked_Lightning. We're at LO_Lightning on X. Feel free to follow us there. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcast. We're there. Just look up Locked On Lightning and you can find us.
All right, Josh, thanks so much.
Thank you, Gil.
In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Stanley Cup. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor their coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million. No medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Kraken, Erica L. Ayala. And Erica, it's been a rough season at times for the Kraken, but there are some reasons for optimism right now. Let's start with Jordan Eberle, the captain. He's been out a long time. He is now finally on a rehab stint, starting that process of returning. Talk to me about what he means to this team and what his absence has meant to this team.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Gil, as you and I'm sure a lot of listeners and viewers know, the Seattle Kraken didn't have a captain after we traded Mark Giordano at the trade deadline of the inaugural season. So it's been a while since this team has had someone wear the letter C. I would say Eberle, Jaden Schwartz are up there, probably Jared McCann, with players that have taken on that leadership role, but it's been a long time coming. And so then for Eberle to get hurt so early in this season, he was hot out of the gate. He was just really getting things started offensively. He was on that Matty Beniers line. And then to have him go down and long-term have to have pelvic surgery, I mean, that's a long process. Anything, like that, you're going to be out for a while. So that's been tough. I think that his leadership has been missed with a consistent basis in the locker room. Because when you're rehabbing, of course, there's just things that you're literally not doing with the team. So that's been a little bit tough. I think some players, Vince Dunn, when he came back from his injury, I think stepped up. But to know that Jordan Eberle is on the up and up. I mean, I've been to several Seattle games this season already, seeing him kind of crutch around the ice rink, and to see now that he can get back on the ice, that he's doing the conditioning and rehabilitation stint with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. We hope that's good news. I mean, the season is what it is at this point, right, Gil? So I don't think that there should be any pressure to rush him back for any reason. I think you want to make sure, though, that he's feeling good, that he has the conditioning, that he has the reps that he needs to feel good so that he can come back and hopefully pick up right where he left off.
Yeah, that would obviously be the best thing for both him and the team. Another reason for optimism, we're seeing some progress with some of the younger players, specifically Shane Wright. Obviously, his development takes time. Talk to me about what you're seeing from him lately.
Yeah, and the Seattle Kraken have dealt with some injuries. We just talked about Jordan Eberle, but there also have been what our head coach Dan Bilesma has called resets. So we've seen Oliver Bjorkstrand be a healthy scratch. We've seen Andrei Burakovsky be a healthy scratch. Ty Cartier has been a healthy scratch for a few times. He's another young buck. He had a lot of time in the NHL last season, but he was a healthy scratch. And all of these, again, have been called resets. But the longest was Shane Wright, who missed 3 games. And we talked about this a lot on Locked On Kraken, because where the others seemed, specifically Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand, although that one I'm still a little puzzled by. I think that was a message, but maybe sent to everyone, not specifically Oliver Bjorkstrand. But anyway, I digress. With Shane Wright, this was definitely not a, punishment type reset. This was a, hey, you came in super hot, very sharp in training camp, in preseason, and then we've seen things start to slip. So let's focus on it. Let's spend some time on what it is we're asking of you, and then get you back to the ice. So what that looked like for Shane Wright was that he was watching games with some of the development staff and general manager Ron Francis at home games, spending at least 20 minutes, so one period, with the coaching staff, talking through things. And when Shane Wright came back, he got in against Anaheim on the road, where he had some success early in his NHL career. That's a young team. It's a team that, at least on paper, the Seattle Kraken should be able to handle. They haven't always, but again, that's another story. And the confidence, immediately you saw the confidence come back. And Shane, I thought, handled everything very professionally. He was talking about some of the things that he discussed with the coaching staff, going back to how he came into training camp. He came in, definitely had put some weight on. He's looking faster. He's looking stronger. And these are all things that, through his progression from juniors while drafted to the Seattle Kraken and then in the AHL last season, these are all things that the Kraken have wanted to see. So even though there was that reset, and of course, when you talk about Shane Wright, there's always going to be a little bit of drama if he's not suited up. But in that case, I felt that that was a great reset. He's been great. I really like him working with Oliver Bjorkstrand and Ellie Tolvanen. That was an early line combination. The line combos have been a little bit in the blender, so he's seen a few different pairings, but he is hard-nosed. He's attacking, getting to the front of the net. I think he's got a great knack for being able to pass. He's been so effective on the power play. So the development of Shane Wright has definitely, as you said, been one of the bright spots for the Seattle Kraken this season.
Talk to me briefly about your take on Four Nations, and from a Kraken perspective, how the players are faring.
Yeah, well, players is generous. It's just the one. It's Capo Caco. And we were kind of talking offline a little bit. So Capo Caco, he was actually a healthy scratch for Team Finland. Now, I don't know exactly what went into that decision. It was his birthday. To what extent that had something to do with it, I'm not really sure. I would tend to lean to no. It was just a decision made for hockey reasons, I'm sure. But Capo Caco, he didn't have a lot of ice time in that win over Sweden, but he used his minutes wisely. There There was even a time where a lot of people thought that he had actually gotten one of the goals for Team Finland. He was right there with Barkov, who after looking at it, and I did sift through the film, everyone, but I agree. It was Barkov's goal, just barely. But the fact that, this is a young player who even himself said, hey, I was a little surprised. I feel like maybe they just ran out of Finnish players, and so they kind of picked me. That was his way of saying that he didn't feel that he performed the way that he can and that he likely should while he was with the Rangers. But he's already surpassed his numbers in fewer games with the Seattle Kraken. He now is on that Matty Beniers line and is making a huge impact.
Trade deadline. Excuse me. Trade deadline is just a couple of weeks away once we get back from the Four Nations break. We've already seen some movement from the Kraken. What do you expect to happen at the trade deadline, and who may be available from the Kraken if they do sell?
Yeah, this is the question. I feel like every time we talk trade deadline, I'm like, we got to do something. And then not very much is done. And unfortunately, I'm kind of feeling that way again, including we talked about the Coachella Valley Firebirds and Jordan Eberle, but he's not the only player that started in the NHL and played for the Seattle Kraken in the NHL that's now with the Firebirds. We have Daniel Sprong, who went through on waivers, but then also Philip Grubauer, who is a big ticket goaltender. So that's been a little bit disappointing. We came into this season knowing we were strapped at the salary cap and promised that moves would happen. Injuries happened instead, unfortunately. The team performed just a little bit better, just well enough to maybe stall some of that. So I do think that there need to be moves. It's not going to be comfortable for a lot of Seattle Kraken fans. We continue to hear names like Yanni Gourde, Brandon Tanev. Unfortunately, Yanni Gourde also dealing with an injury right now, but someone else. And again, Kraken fans, I think this might hurt the heartstrings, but we have to know that things like this are necessary. Jared McCann has gotten a little bit lost in the sauce this season. He's still one of our highest scorers as far as points overall, but he's had to work really hard. I don't see that with this offense and with who we have on the lines. I feel like he's kind of been sacrificed with kind of a Modge Podge line from time to time. And that's just not giving him the opportunities that we usually rely on him to score in. So I really do think, again, Jared McCann is probably a name, and this might be something, honestly, that McCann is okay with, but he's probably the big ticket item, so to speak, that might be on the move come the trade deadline. And I mentioned Philip Grubauer, and I want to say again that I don't think at this point it's realistic that he will be moved within the season, but there has to be some serious conversation in the offseason on what we're going to do from a goaltending perspective, because obviously it just hasn't been working out with Philip Grubauer.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out over the next few months. Erica, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
For sure. Well, of course, you can find Locked on Kraken wherever you listen to audio podcasts. And for the video folks, hello, video folks, you can also find us on YouTube. You can also check out the Locked on NHL show where Rachel Donner and I have the Women's Hockey Report every Saturday morning. And these days, I'm mostly on Blue Sky at elindsay08 on Blue Sky. That's where I'm most active. But always a pleasure to talk hockey with you, Gil.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Erica. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from hosts Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank my guest, Chris Gawlik of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights, Josh Sperber of Locked On Lightning, and Erica L. Ayala of Locked On Kraken for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we're here 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the NHL. And Saturday, we have our Women's Hockey Spotlight, so make sure you check that out as well. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.